Okay, hello everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our Regenerative Healthcare webinar with Dr. Scott Stoll. My name is Chandler Rosenberg and I'm the Managing Director of PlantBased Utah. For those of you who may not be familiar, PlantBased Utah is a 501c3 nonprofit that was started in 2017 by a group of healthcare providers and advocates who wanted to educate the community and especially other healthcare providers about the benefits of plant-based nutrition for personal and planetary health. After a couple of quiet COVID years with no in-person events, we are so excited to be back. This is our first educational event of the year, and we've got some plans in the works for some other in-person gatherings as well, including our in-person symposium this fall at the Park City Hospital. I know some of you have already attended our backyard garden volunteer days this spring, so thank you to those of you who have. But we have one more coming up this Saturday, April 16th, where we'll be prepping two of our backyard farms that we installed last year. It was actually Dr. Stoll's regenerative healthcare message that inspired us to go in that direction. So it's great to have him here tonight. And for those of you who are not familiar with our backyard farm project, we received a grant last spring from T. Colin Campbell's Center for Nutrition Studies that enabled us to partner with a local organization called the Village Cooperative to install 3 backyard farms in 2021. And this year we're building on that partnership to install 2 more. The backyard farms operate on a thirds model. So 1/3 of the produce harvested is sold through a CSA program. 1/3 is donated to volunteers who want to give their time at any point throughout the season. And 1/3 is donated free to the community. Last year, primarily through a free farm stand and a few CSA sponsorships. And this year we'll be donating through a partnership with Comunidades Unidas. So if you're interested in helping out this Saturday or throughout the growing season, I will put the sign up form in the chat. We will also be holding a PBU member social and potluck on Sunday, May 22nd at Sugar House Park from 10 a.m. to noon. So mark your calendars for that, and we will be sending out more info in the coming weeks. We are dying to get together with you all. So even if you're not a member, but you might be interested, we would still love to have you. Or if you would like to join, you can do so on our website at plantbasedutah.org/membership for a $25 annual donation. Couple of last housekeeping notes here. This presentation is being recorded and will be sent out later this week. And following Dr. Stoll's presentation, we will be doing a 10 to 15 minute Q&A. So please put your questions in the Q&A box below and we will get to those at the end. And if you have other comments or reflections throughout the presentation, feel free to pop those in the chat. That is all for announcements, so let's get into it. I'm so excited to introduce our speaker tonight, Dr. Scott Stoll, who is a personal hero of mine. Over the last 2 years, the climate crisis and the COVID pandemic have really highlighted how fragile our current food system is and how unsustainable it is, both for human health and the health of our ecosystems. So although I'm absolutely biased, I think this is one of the most important conversations out there right now. And I really appreciate you all being here. And I am so grateful to Dr. Stoll for taking the time to be here with us tonight. Dr. Stoll is a board-certified physician specializing in sports and musculoskeletal medicine and is recognized as an international leader in lifestyle medicine and whole food plant-based nutrition. He is the co-founder of the Plantrition Project, which is the national organization that inspired PlantBased Utah. He's also the co-founder of the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference, the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention, and the Regenerative Health Institute, a unique collaborative project with the Rodale Institute that integrates a regenerative vision of human health, agriculture, and the environment. He was a member of the 1994 Olympic bobsled team and served as a physician for the United States bobsled and skeleton team and Lehigh University. Dr. Stoll served as a member of the Whole Foods Scientific and Medical Advisory Board and consults with healthcare organizations globally to integrate lifestyle medicine solutions. Every year, Dr. Stoll hosts the very popular one-week total health immersions in Florida and helps attendees recover lost health, overcome addictions, and restore emotional balance. In addition to authoring numerous books, scientific articles, and speaking internationally, Dr. Stoll has appeared on a wide variety of shows, including The Dr. Oz Show, hosting a 2018 PBS special, Food as Medicine, and numerous documentaries, including The Game Changers, Eating You Alive, Disease Reversal Hope, and PlantWise. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Stoll.
Thank you so much, Chandler. I'm so grateful to be with you all. And we have better internet this week, so welcome, and we're going to have a great evening. In the last week, I picked up a little frog in my voice, so I apologize for that. But we're going to have a great evening, and I thank you all for coming back this week. You know, as Chandler said, this whole idea of the power of the plate and the intersection of the way our food is produced and the types of food that we eat, to me, it's one of the most important conversations that we should be having. And unfortunately, it's not that common. So this evening, what I'd like to do is, this is a very high-level presentation just to give you a 30,000-foot view of this nexus of the power of a plate, to begin forming kind of an understanding of the way our food is produced, the types of foods that are produced, not only the impact on the agricultural resources, but as we all know, on this presentation tonight, the impact on human bodies, and to begin to see that these systems are holistically integrated, and that whatever we do to one system, whether it's exploitation or regeneration, leads to the same consequences all the way down that supply chain. And really for me, this started quite a number of years ago. I decided to attend an organic farming conference with my then 12-year-old son. And so we were at the conference, and I happened to go to the Rodale presentation by Jeff Moyer, the executive director of Rodale. And it's something that I'd been thinking about for a number of years. My wife and I always had a vision of constructing an education center on a farm to begin educating people on this relationship between soil and plants and human health and resources, in hopes that there would be a grand awakening for most people to see that their health is directly tied back to the soil, and ultimately the way that we steward these resources of soil and water and earth have not only an impact on that resource that we're going to be shepherding for the next generation, but all the way down the supply chain to our bodies, and then all the way up the chain to global resources, including economic resources for countries. And so after I saw the presentation, I went back to work, and on Monday morning I was taking care of a patient, doing some regenerative injections, and I was telling her about the conference, and she said, well, my husband spoke. His name is Jeff Moyer from the Rodale Institute. And by the way, he's coming to see you next week for a torn rotator cuff. So when Jeff was there in my office and I was injecting his shoulder with some PRP, platelet-rich plasma, for a rotator cuff, I was sharing my vision for this farm idea. And he said, that's a great idea. Let's present it to the board of directors at Rodale. And so we did, and the board thought it was a great idea. So they carved out some land on the Rodale farm for what will become the Regenerative Health Institute, a brick and mortar place of inspiration that will house these conversations, serve as a place where people can come and get education and see that connection between soil and human health, indoor, outdoor gardens and kitchens, but also an opportunity to multiply that around the world to further this conversation and bring together people that are currently not talking. Doctors and farmers, healthcare administrators and local farms, all the way up to the FDA, the EPA, and the USDA, people that are not talking, but they need to be talking. And so we're well along that path now. We've done a number of initiatives, and we have an exciting initiative later that I'll tell you about in the presentation. So our plate is incredibly powerful. And as we all know, because we're on this call, the plate is incredibly powerful for preventing, suspending, and reversing disease. Every year we eat about 2,000 pounds of food. 2,000 pounds of food passes through our bodies. It's one of the greatest exposures, other than the air we breathe and our skin, to the outside world. And really what's happening in the outside world actually becomes a part of our inner milieu as we eat food. That food that we eat also has an impact on the downstream production of food that we really don't think about. We're so spoiled today that we can go to the grocery store and we can buy essentially anything that we want. And we've lost that connection. We're disconnected from the production of food. And in many ways, it's contributed to this internal kind of self-focus that food is really just about me. But we forget that it's about the farm family and about the soil and about the resources that it took to produce that food. So tonight I just want to spend some time thinking about the power of our plates, the power of that 2,000 pounds of food that we consume, and the way that that food was produced. You know, food is grown in soil, and we all know this, but there are many people that don't. In fact, some of the programs on the Rodale farm that we've created bring in inner city people to the farm, and they don't know that carrots grow in soil. They're surprised to pull out a carrot. And so there's an incredible disconnect with the way we grow food. And for most people, they never stop to ask, where does my food come from and how was it produced? What did it actually take to produce that food and get it to my plate? Who was involved? How many resources were utilized? And what's the longevity of those resources? You know, there's nothing is eternal, and so our resources have a limited supply, and so we need to start thinking about the supply chain along with our food production. And the power of that plate, it sits at this incredible web of influence. You know, our plate is connected to, not, as we know, human health, but human health is also connected to relationships, people's work lives, their faith lives, their social lives, and the food that we eat has an incredible impact on every one of those aspects of the totality of someone's life. We also know food sits at the intersection of finances, of agriculture, of national governments and politics. It's leveraged by governments against people and for people. Food is one of the most important and most powerful foundational cornerstones in our culture, but we don't think about it that way. Food is often just, you know, a craving. Sometimes it's not even a thought. It's an unconscious eating experience. And so food has been, we've lost the beauty, the wonder, and the power of food today. And if we just look at how much food is produced in 1 minute, it's 7,605 tons of food is produced. 5,000 is consumed, and we're wasting 2,000 tons a minute. More than enough food is being produced to feed everybody in the world. One of the largest problems is actually food waste. But if we look at the resources used to produce that food, 200 tons of diesel fuel, 6,000 gigabytes of energy, 400 tons of fertilizer, and look at that number for water. 6,153,184 tons of water utilized to produce the food that we're consuming. And what we eat really does matter. And I know Chandler and all of you are passionate about this, but just a few statistics to highlight this. The food system is the single largest contributor to the depletion of our most precious non-renewable resource, and that's global biodiversity. We think about water, we think about erosion of soil, which we'll talk about in a minute, but global biodiversity is being affected more rapidly than any other non-renewable resource. Agriculture now occupies roughly half of the planet's habitable surface. It's incredible. That's why it's one of the most impactful industries. It utilizes 69% of the extracted fresh water. It's responsible for 25 to 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The expansion of fishing fleets have led to the exploitation of 90% of the world's marine fisheries. Another reason why the idea of eating seafood for omega-3 fatty acids is really unsustainable. We spend roughly $1.7 trillion on food and at least $2 trillion on lifestyle-related management. We forget those two things are absolutely connected, inextricably linked together, but no one is having that conversation. 10.8% of the world's population is food insecure. This one's amazing. 75% of the world's food is generated from just 12 plants and 5 animals. 12 plants and 5 animals. There's several 100,000 varieties of edible plants, but we're utilizing 12 and 5. And when we think about the impact on the biodiversity of our microbiome, reducing our intake of food down to 12 plants and 5 animals is destroying the internal biodiversity of our lives as well as the external biodiversity. 9 in 10 farms are family owned and produce more than 80% of the world's food supply, a tremendous opportunity to start partnering locally. Agricultural provides work for 40% of the world's population. People in developing countries spend 60 to 80% of their income on food, and Americans spend just 10%. A person living in India with type 2 diabetes will spend approximately 25% of their income just to manage that single disease that's directly related to food. In Africa, 97% of the crops are watered primarily through rainfall. And so we've globalized this food system, but we've lost localization of our food system. And as a result, 68% of the world's food supplies are being grown elsewhere and shipped in. I was recently in the United Arab Emirates. 90% of their food is transported in from a variety of locations around the world, with the increased cost of the diesel fuel costs, carbon emissions that come from the transportation of that food, rather than solving the problem by growing food locally. We also have another challenge in our food system, and that's the use of pesticides and herbicides. Globally, there's 7.7 billion pounds of herbicides and biocides that are sprayed on crops on a yearly basis. And we can see the increase in the use of biocides really starting after World War II. There was the Green Revolution, which increased the production of food, feeding lots of people. However, the foundation of the Green Revolution was better living through chemistry. Rather than trying to understand biological systems through systems theory and maximizing the health of a system to maximize yield production, we exploited biology by tinkering with science and created biocides. Essentially, what happened after World War II, we started utilizing nitrogen from plants that were producing bombs for World War II, not paying attention to the health of the soil, and developing plants that grew rapidly but were weak because of the poor life in the soil. Because they were weak, they were more susceptible to infections and insects. We developed biocides to cut down on the infections and the insects to maintain yield, but at the expense of the life in the soil, causing further problems. And so as a result, we have this massive exposure to biocides, which are occupational risk for people. As we can see in this picture, most of the people around the world do not use proper protective equipment. It's depleting soils, leading to soil erosion globally, and we're losing topsoil at an exponential rate. And according to the World Health Organization and the UN, we are losing topsoil at about an inch a year, with potentially only 60 harvests left if we don't change the way that we are managing our soils and our crop production. Do pesticides really matter? You know, there's lots of people will make the will make the argument that pesticides and biocides don't cause cancer, therefore they're not a significant risk. We know if we look at the human fat that there's at least 29 different pesticides present in every person in America. And also looking at human fat, we have more than 600 different types of chemicals that are present. The President's Cancer Panel said that the entire U.S. population is exposed on a daily basis to numerous agricultural chemicals, many of which have known or suspected carcinogenic or endocrine disrupting properties. It's also well documented that pesticide exposure, the highest levels of DDT and DDE are related to dementia and Alzheimer's, a very strong association. So it's not just cancer. There's also an association in literature linking it to inflammation that contributes to insulin resistance. But all the way back at the beginning of the supply chain, so we always think about ourselves at the end and our own risk for disease, but we forget about the farm families that are utilizing pesticides. And so the farm families research has found that those prenatal exposures, just from being on the farm, reduces the IQ of their children by 7 points. And the higher the level of exposure, the poorer the cognitive outcomes. In farm families as well, there's higher degrees of leukemias and other cancers because of those chronic daily exposures. In residential areas, the highest levels of exposure are linked to childhood leukemia, and in mothers, shortened gestation and lower birth weight. So the spraying of these biocides does have an impact on the soil, on the farm families, on the children in the farm families, and on the individuals consuming that food. And we are producing, food that is unhealthy. So at the end of the day, we're using biocides, we're eroding soil, producing weak plants, and producing food that is contributing to a very unhealthy diet. Essentially, 60% of the average diet of most Americans, and when they actually survey Americans, most people don't believe they're eating an unhealthy diet, but when we look at the diet, 60% of the average people consume ultra-processed food. About 20-25% is animal products, and only 12 to 15% is produce. Much of that is coming from conventional farms with pesticides and non-regenerative practices. That also includes, as you all know, juice, French fries, ketchup, and a number of others. So we're producing an unhealthy diet that's producing disease at the expense of our agricultural resources. And as we look globally at the impact of this westernized diet, we can see that the deaths related to non-communicable diseases are increasing. And right now, about 71% of the deaths in the world are related to non-communicable or lifestyle-related diseases, and that number is growing. The fastest growing percent of that population is in developing countries, because as any of you know that have been on missions trips or worked in the developing world, we are shipping in unhealthy food, which causes disease that we have to treat with medications from the Western world. We're creating dependency rather than bringing in agriculture to gain independency and health. But it's not just death, it's also disability adjusted life years. Number one cause of disability, 255 million disability adjusted life years every year are non-communicable diseases, lifestyle related diseases. So people are dying of non-communicable diseases, but they're not even living because they're living disabled from the same diseases that are coming from the same unhealthy foods produced by the same unhealthy practices. And part of the problem is we've flipped our expenditures. 1960, we spent almost $75 million on food and 27 million on healthcare expenditures. 2017, 1.5 trillion on food and 3.2 trillion on healthcare. We can see that not only has the population expanded, yes, and numbers have changed because of the population, but the expenses for healthcare have gone up radically in that same time period. I would argue largely because of the food that we're eating today. And we know from the global burden of disease studies that diet is the #1 cause of death globally. And we also know from the state of U.S. health burden of disease, dietary risks are the #1 cause of disease and disability in the United States. But you just have to ask, why aren't we talking about this? These are large studies, well documented, JAMA. Why are we not talking about it, and why are we not doing anything about it? Also, just a little more food math. The standard American diet, it takes about 2 football fields to feed 1 person per year, resources of land and water to produce the meat. A plant-based diet, those same 2 football fields would feed 14 people per year. More than enough land to feed the world and let some of that land go back to forest. But we cannot feed the world on a keto or paleo diet. It's just not possible. And if we looked at an average family utilizes 12,000 gallons of water per year, but it takes the same 12,000 gallons of water to produce 10 pounds of beef, less than that family would eat in a month. So there's a disproportionate utilization of water for the production of meat, rather than utilizing water or even recapturing rain to produce food, or, as we'll talk later, indoor growing to produce plant-based foods, which preserve resources and infuse health and hope. The Eat Lancet study that was organized by Dr. Walter Willett as the PI, his statement said that transformation to healthy diets by 2050 will require dietary shifts, and he recommends consumptions of plants that have to double, and the consumption of meat, especially red meat, needs to be reduced by more than 50%. So it's a good flag in the ground, and it's a great goal, but simply reducing meat production by 50% is not enough for the soil and climate crisis that we're looking at. We have to go further than that. And I'm not idealistic, believing that the entire world will be vegan, but I do believe that we can reduce our meat consumption well below 20%, ideally below 10%, as a global community to maximize the regeneration of the earth, the soil, resources, and people. It's not going to be easy to get there. I am well aware of that. After being in this industry for 20 years and taking a lot of heat, I know it's not going to be easy. I know there's a massive challenge ahead of us, but I believe it's possible. So we really have a Chinese finger trap. If you remember that game where you put your fingers in and you can't pull them out, that's essentially where we found ourselves with agriculture and the healthcare industry. We're stuck as we keep pulling against the system. And just to compare the two, if we look at the ag industry and the healthcare industry, there are a lot of similarities in the problems that they're facing. In the ag industry, we've subsidized monocrop farming, one crop, wheat, corn, soy, and we've intensively focused on the yield per acre, but not on the quality of the crops or the health of the soil. Similarly, in the healthcare industry, we've subsidized disease management, intensely focusing on volume and procedures in our hospitals. We've lost topsoil and biodiversity in agriculture. We have an epidemic of non-communicable diseases. 30% of the world's arable land has become unproductive in the last 40 years. By 2040, 6 out of 7 deaths will be related to lifestyle choices. Soil's lost 10 to 40 times faster than it's produced because of the way that we're farming. And 1.9 billion people today are overweight, with 600 million obese people globally. The current system emphasizes small numbers of crops, subsidizes and insures those crops. Physicians receive fewer than 25 hours of nutritional education, and they are incentivized to see more patients and do more procedures and order more tests. We have in agriculture this perpetuation of an industrialized agrochemical food production system, and we have a similar perpetuation of a pharmacological device-driven system in the healthcare industry. And so we have a lot of similar problems that requires one common change. In the ag industry, we're utilizing fertilizers to manage crops that are grown in sick soil. Similar in the healthcare industry, pharmacologic intervention for diseases grown in sick bodies with unhealthy cells and microbiome. Agrochemicals destroy the biodiversity of the soil. Some of those agrochemicals find their way into the food system, including the antibiotics used in animal production, and the ag food farm destroy the biodiversity of our microbiome and our biodiversity inside. We have intensive yield focus for financial gain, intensive volume focus for reimbursement. We have limited research dollars for both regenerative ag and lifestyle nutrition. Farmers and doctors are struggling because of yields and RVUs. And we have insurance for crop failure and insurance for illness, but no investment in regenerative solutions. And this is not old. This is not just a new problem, and it's not a new solution that we're actually seeking. This wisdom has been around for thousands of years. As we can see, Xenophon said to be a successful farmer, one must first know the nature of the soil. And Hippocrates, a physician, should know something about the soil where the patient's food comes from. So these wise men knew and understood that health begins in the soil. Health for the earth, health for the farm family, health for the individual consuming it, and health for the globe when we begin paying attention to the system's biology of healthy soil. And so there are a number of challenges. We're going to talk about solutions, so it's not all bad news. But there are challenges as we look at having people transition over to a healthy diet and farmers transitioning over to regenerative agriculture. Both of them are challenged by the finances of the solution. Farmers transitioning to regenerative agriculture find that there's a 2 to 3 year window of time where it's difficult to earn the same income. Individuals transitioning to a plant-based diet, especially in developing countries, have a significant challenge affording that food. Cost of fruits and vegetables can be prohibitive. So we see that 52% of household income would go to fruits and vegetables in low-income countries. It's only 18% in middle income, 16% in upper, and 2% high-income countries. So fruit and vegetable consumption among individuals decreased as the relative cost increased. So in order to balance this, local agriculture has to be a part of this solution to offset the growth of the non-communicable disease burden, both disability adjusted life years and deaths in the still developing countries. We can see here that the cost for the third world countries is expensive. For lower income countries, the LICs, 19 times higher than higher income countries. And the servings of one serving of fruit was 50 times higher in these lower income countries. So for us to make a dietary recommendation, for parts of the world, as we would, that a whole plant-based diet is optimal for preventing, suspending, and reversing these non-communicable diseases, it's important for us to understand that dietary recommendation of just 2 servings of fruits, 3 servings of vegetables was unaffordable for 57% of the individuals. Tragic. That's why agriculture has to be a part of the solution, local agriculture. And so as much as we're pushing into transforming healthcare with lifestyle medicine and whole food plant-based nutrition, similarly, the transformation on the agriculture and the health side cannot occur unless we focus on helping local agriculture gain some life and increase production for the local communities. So what do we know? We know that whole food plant-based nutrition is the most effective diet to prevent, suspend, and reverse disease. And regenerative agriculture reverses soil degeneration, depletion, and erosion, improves the health of the plants, improves the health of waterways, biodiversity, and all of life. And so combined, regenerative agriculture and a whole food plant-based diet are the most effective intervention for our planet today. But there are a lot of things that we don't know. Does organic produce suspend or reverse diseases more effectively than conventional? We have data that would suggest that it does, but it's not yet proven. How does organic soil contribute to the health of the human microbiome? Very interesting studies coming out showing that when we consume fruits and vegetables grown in organic soil, we're inoculating our own microbiome on a daily basis with that food. What are the absolute risks of pesticides and biocides? How does food from regenerated soil impact human systems like the immune system and inflammation? How do we measure the effects of meaningful science in these areas? So lots to understand. This is the positive side. This is in my old hometown. We live just outside of Nashville now. This is in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And this is a partnership on the hospital campus between St. Luke's Hospital and Rodale Institute with a 5-acre organic farm. And so regenerative agriculture in this kind of relationship is a system in which agriculture and healthcare collaborate to prevent disease, and degeneration with an intensive focus on holistic interventions that optimize and regenerate in harmony with nature and the human body. So it's really a holistic systems approach. It's neat on this farm, we worked to create a relationship so that the medical school students and the residents in the family medicine and internal medicine dual board programs actually spend time with the farmer and have their own plot of land on the farm to begin growing some of their own food. These two pictures were taken on different sides of the same road, believe it or not. The one on your left with the green grass is an organic farm. The one on the right is a non-organic farm, conventional farm. Same day, just across the street. And it shows you probably better than my entire hour presentation, the benefits of a regenerative organic approach. There's life in regenerative organic, and there is only death, disease, and depletion in conventional agriculture. So as part of the solution, we need to begin realigning our approach, mindsets, beliefs to partner with systems holistically rather than reductionistically, which we've done. It's okay to understand things reductionistically. That's the nature of science. We need to expand out then and look at those individual components in relationship to the system. We need to protect, restore, and regenerate cells and soils rather than disturb, destroy, and deplete. We need to promote the idea of wholeness and biodiversity rather than just the exploitation of biology for short-term gains, which is what we're doing. So regenerative vision for both agriculture and healthcare is increased resiliency in both systems, beginning with a focus on the biome, the soil and the microbiome. Increased resistance at both levels, soil and human health. Increased nutrient density of the food. Interesting study and research coming out of the vegetable systems trial at Rodale has shown that conventional agriculture and organic agriculture grown literally 3 feet apart, have dramatically different levels of antioxidants. And in 26 different nutrients, phytonutrients or antioxidants, there was a difference between the organic and the conventional of between 1 and 700 times more of those 26 different nutrients, grown only 3 feet apart. And we have to believe, now knowing and understanding the benefits of the phytonutrients on human health, that breakfast, lunch, and dinner with 700 times more phytochemicals will have an impact. And we also know that those same polyphenols, those phytochemicals, have a positive impact on our microbiome, increasing the growth of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. We're going to regenerate soil through this combination, as well as regenerating individuals and systems. And at the end of the day, for both the farmers and the clinicians, there's increased fulfillment. Everybody wants to be a part of a system that's growing and thriving. And for the overall system, there's global regeneration of resources, land, air, water, individuals, healthcare, and economies. How powerful is the opportunity? It's incredible. By just switching from animal agriculture to plant-based agriculture, we can reclaim 80% of the land. 80% of the land currently is used for livestock production, produces only 18% of the calories and 37% of the protein from this largest study to date, as you can see here. But the opportunity is, as we talked about transitioning away from animal agriculture, Walter Willett said 50%. I believe we need to go much further down, 10% or less. That shift in farmland produces a robust change in our climate. And I believe perhaps faster than we might realize. One of the things that we've seen with human system biology, when you expose a human body to a robust plant-based diet and lifestyle, many of these diseases resolve in just weeks. With our immersions, we see incredible transformations of people's lives in 1 to 2 weeks, things that I never imagined were possible. I believe the same is true globally, that when we begin to shift in that direction and actually begin participating in regenerative agriculture, the earth and its systems will regenerate more quickly than we might imagine. Some people ask the question, can we produce enough food with regenerative agriculture and organic agriculture? It's been one of the challenges to regenerative organic agriculture from the conventional agricultural industry. Rodale has produced research for more than 40 years looking at the production of organic and regenerative agriculture. And they have found that it produces up to 40% higher in times of drought, essentially the same during normal years. They have no toxic chemicals, uses 45% less energy, releases 40% fewer carbon emissions, and for the farmers, 3 to 6 times greater profit. So their yields are competitive. They're actually substantially better in times of drought. They're better financially for farmers and preserve resources. So the research on regenerative agriculture also shows that there's a substantially lower exposure to heavy metals and biocides. It's not zero because of cross-contamination, but it is dramatically lower. There's higher phenolic content. That's what we talked about. New research hasn't been published yet that I spoke about earlier. There's higher anti-mutagenic effect, fighting cancer. There's higher antioxidant exposure. There's the restoration of soil, carbon sequestration, and Rodale and a number of others have shown that with a significant switch to regenerative agriculture, utilizing cover crops, between 80 and 100% of the excess carbon could be sequestered in a proactive regenerative system. And we also know there's a significant lower risk of dementia. So how can we begin actually planting seeds and seeing change? One thing that I have found through several decades in this industry is the importance of starting conversations and continuing conversations and utilizing those conversations to start an activity. And so I think we need to start more conversations. One of the things that we're doing at the Rodale Farm this year, we're hosting a 5-day intensive immersion on soil and human health. So we're inviting doctors and healthcare administrators from around the world to join us on the Rodale Farm for 5 days of interaction between lifestyle medicine, plant-based physicians, and regenerative farmers to start a conversation and begin strategizing how can we work together to spread this message? How can we begin empowering local communities with this information? What are the resources that are necessary for us to create to begin initiating change locally and nationally? So conversations are critically important. We've always believed that events are an amazing place to start conversations, and so that's why we're starting that event on the Rodale Farm. Medical school and postgraduate school education is important. We're launching an initiative with Plantrition Project this year called Plantrition U, which will be a free platform for every healthcare professional student in the world. And I think we'll make that available to young farming students as well that want to learn about whole food plant-based nutrition, including lectures like this. We want to capture them early before the system trains it out of them, and we have to help them unlearn before they learn. We want to get them early. We need different agricultural and healthcare education tracks at universities, and that starts with educating some of these speakers, more consumer education, and initiate opportunities for local medical professionals. There are already medical schools stepping into this arena. Wayne State, University of South Carolina, Greenville, ACLM residency curriculum will be in over 80 residencies globally. And so we're beginning to see an infusion of not only lifestyle medicine, but the same agricultural message that is kind of riding the coattails to begin educating this incredibly talented and powerful group of clinicians that are being trained right now. And I honestly believe that this group of healthcare professionals in medical school and residency today will be the group that ushers in lifestyle medicine and regenerative agriculture globally. So we're working to set them up and give them resources they need to accomplish that task. There are hospital systems that are also beginning to step into this space. Dr. David Feinberg was the CEO of Geisinger Health. He said we should be investing in people and processes, not hospitals. And so they did. They started a program called Fresh Food Pharmacy. And we need more programs like this that are assisting local people that have a need, both because of food scarcity and insecurity, and a health need, and partnering with local farmers, food banks to provide food to assist those people in making those lifestyle changes. They did a pilot study which has been published in peer-reviewed journals and written up in Harvard Business Review. They took 37 patients for a year. They had hemoglobin A1Cs of 9.6. A year later, they were 7.5, resulting in a corresponding 40% decrease in the risk of death and serious consequences. But amazingly, their mean healthcare costs dropped by 80%, from $240,000 per patient per year to $48,000 per patient per year. And on average, based on the study, they're predicting $8,000 to $12,000 savings per 1 point reduction in A1C. So it's so successful, they multiplied the food pharmacy into surrounding areas and are looking to partner more with agriculture to also begin supplying that. But it's just one pilot to show us what's possible when we think out of the box. So some other solutions real quick as we finish up tonight. I really believe one of the most important things we need to do is educate consumers. It can lead to some of the fastest change as consumers begin voting with their dollars, their $500 to multiple $1,000s a month in food budgets, voting with what they buy voting to support agriculture that is organic, regenerative, and or local through local farmers markets, it will begin to shift the production of food quickly. I also believe we need to engage social agents of change, the influencers and pop culture with these kinds of messages. As much as we like to think that doctors are important, Beyonce may be more important in helping to spread this message of regenerative agriculture and regenerative healthcare based on a whole food plant-based diet. There's a great educational opportunity at medical visits, in schools, with insurance companies, businesses, churches, or places of faith, and assisting people with the information just to begin a conversation in all of these different channels can spread rapidly and multiply. For example, one healthcare provider sees about 2,000 patients, and so 1,000 can educate 2 million. 100,000 can educate 2 billion. And that's just through medical visits. So there's amazing opportunity when we begin educating and empowering and equipping people to have meaningful conversations. This is Dr. Ron Weiss, a good friend of mine, has the Ethos Farm in New Jersey. And so it's just a reminder that we need to incentivize clinicians and farmers to utilize regenerative practices. This needs to occur financially through value-based care. We need to shift funding in agriculture to assist farmers with making that transition to produce healthy food or to capture carbon and or both. And so that the financial shifts at the top level will rapidly fuel the adoption of regenerative agriculture and healthcare. We do need new research in nutrition and organic farming and that key intersection between the two. Healthcare is waiting for more research, more randomized control trials, meta-analyses, systematic reviews. Agriculture is waiting for more studies to validate the benefits of regenerative agriculture, especially the financial benefit to individuals. We need to provide support for farmers and doctors. We need to pay farmers for ecosystem and carbon sequestration, which is actually beginning. We need to provide grants and loans for regenerative ag. We need to assist in transitioning to value-based care models in healthcare, which is coming. As many the CEOs tell me, they know it's coming, but they're trying to straddle the fence as long as possible between our current volume-based care and value-based care. Training more organic inspectors, it's a weakness in the system, and grants to assist young farmers and physicians. I really believe there's an opportunity, as we've seen in the plant-based space, there are a number of large food companies that have been very profitable. And I would like to encourage them to begin taking part of their profits and assisting regenerative agriculture and lifestyle medicine, some of those key not-for-profit organizations, big and small, that are impacting those areas and have probably the greatest high impact in a short period of time. The solution is collaboration. And so it's not one organization, it's not farming, it's not healthcare, it's not business, it's not marketing. It's a collaborative effort between lots of voices with a shared understanding that we have to do something about the way that we produce food, and we have to do something about the types of foods that are being produced, and we have to educate everybody in between. It's through that shared common understanding and common goal and common conversation that we will see dramatic change. It takes humility to get to that point. Not everyone wants to be the underside of the bridge, but it takes people that are willing to collaborate, to stay in their lane, to contribute to the solution, and for all of us to work together for a brighter future. And as Stephen Covey said, and I really like this, to learn and not do is really not to learn. To know and not to do is really not to know. I think Stephen Covey is from Utah, and it's such great wisdom. And one of the things I appreciate about this organization and the plant-based space is that people are learners and doers. And Chandler, you are such a great example of that, and I want to appreciate you and compliment you that you heard a lecture and you went with your father and Patrick and the entire group there in Utah, and you did something amazing with your backyard gardens. And so I just want to applaud you for being a doer. And I know lots of people can look at you and learn, and I know that you're a shining example to everyone on the call and everyone that's watching this presentation tonight. So thank you for your time and attention. A few resources from Plant Nutrition Project. Our conference coming up in the fall, the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference. I know most of you are probably aware of that. We have the free journal, the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention, ijdrp.org. Sign up today, and if you have research, we would love for you to contribute. Plant-Based Docs is a geo directory of plant-based healthcare providers. And watch for Plant Nutrition U. We'll be launching that in the next month. So Chandler, I'll turn it back to you for the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Scott. That was such a fantastic presentation. Yeah, we've got a few questions already. If you guys have any questions, please throw them in the Q&A. The first is it possible to upscale regenerative farming to big fields, or is it suitable for small fields only? Is crop shift a type of regenerative farming?
Yeah, thank you, Isabella. That's a great question. And oftentimes people think of regenerative agriculture as small local farms. One of the things that I appreciate about the Rodale Institute is that they actively work with large farms to shift to organic regenerative agriculture. And we're talking millions of acres. So they're teaching them how to lay down cover crops. And Jeff Moyer, who's the executive director at the Rodale Institute, developed a roller crimper and a planter. So it's an amazing machine that rolls over the cover crops, crimps it off, it becomes covering for the soil, but as that plant dies, it also becomes food for the soil. And to Jeff's amazing credit, he developed the blueprints for this, and he put it out there for free to anyone in the world. And so today you'll find roller crimpers all over the world of every different size, scalable even to millions of acres. And so Rodale is passionate about converting conventional acres to organic regenerative acres. And you'll see more of that in the future. So thank you. That was a great question.
On that note, I have a question. What do you see the role of livestock in regenerative agriculture? I know that's kind of in the plant-based world, it's like a tricky question because a lot of people see it as, essential for the soil health. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And you're right, it's a kind of a thorny question. There's research to show that animals benefit the soil by feeding on the soil, defecating on the soil, and creating that natural life that you see in a forest. So that is true. You can also regenerate soil very effectively by only using cover crops. So it's not an either or. You don't have to use animal agriculture to regenerate soil. It can be done equally well with cover crops. Always the question in the plant-based space or vegan space is, if you raise the animals, do you eat the animals? And I think that's one of the pushbacks. But I do know of vegan farmers that love animals, and so they're actually adopting animals to put on their land, taking care of the animals, letting them graze and regenerate soil. And in that way, they are contributing life in many different ways. So that's a really good question.
I love that idea, kind of like an animal sanctuary regenerative farm.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, this one's from Natasha at Center for Nutrition Studies. Hi, Natasha. What have you found to be the most effective ways to talk about regenerative healthcare with the general public? And what about healthcare professionals? What specific things get their attention and encourage them to want to know more?
Yeah, thank you, Natasha. I have found through the years, and I've been doing like plant-based nutrition and lifestyle medicine for almost 20 years. So I've had lots of opportunities to pitch to patients and other people. And I have found that the biggest opportunity is when you are speaking to someone's immediate need. And that opens the door for a conversation that can expand later. So, for example, if I had a young athlete in my office and they were really interested in building muscle and recovery, starting the conversation about plant-based nutrition and expanding it eventually into agriculture gives me, kind of relational equity. Someone that has type 2 diabetes, and we start with diabetes, a younger person with acne, I start talking about the power of plants to reverse acne and that her skin can change or his skin can change in a couple of weeks. But by entering into that door of what's most important or most pressing for them, their hot button right now, we gain entrance to continue the conversation, which really expands. And I love to go back then, once I have their attention, to talk about the power of the plate, because it's something that's so relevant. We see it 3 times a day. And just telling people you eat 2,000 pounds of food in a year, what kind of impact do you think that has on your body, gets their attention. And then you can say, what kind of impact do you think that has on the resources of soil and water and the resources that we're stewarding on our globe for future generations? And by asking questions, it opens up the opportunity to have a conversation. I found that by, pitching just a relevant, poignant question like that sparks curiosity, and it's a better learning opportunity than if and I've done this before, so I'm speaking from experience, back up the dump truck and start loading in, studies and data. People's eyes glaze over pretty quickly and you lose the opportunity to influence them again in the future. So last thing I'll finish with, Natasha, that, not a salt advocate, but in this case I am. I give people, just enough salt to make them thirsty that they'll come back and ask for another glass of water. So just enough information to spark their curiosity and cause them to be interested, so I have another opportunity to continue the conversation when I see them again.
Love that answer. This one is from Tom. Thank you, Scott. Can nutritious rices and healthiest lentils make an affordable difference in low-income countries? Are healthy spices affordable in the third world? I'm going to say at least in India, where I used to live. Yes, they are.
That's right. Yeah, thank you, Tom, and thanks for your invitation tonight and all the work you're doing and your friendship. I really appreciate that. You're absolutely right that the healthy rices, grains, lentils, beans are very inexpensive and can be produced in mass in many of the developing countries. And that's an affordable opportunity for a step into a whole food plant-based diet. And many of them are already producing some of these, and so it's just a matter of scaling those foods. There are a number of countries that are working on drought-resistant crops. I was just in the United Arab Emirates, and I was speaking with someone that was a part of a project. They brought ancient seeds from Morocco that were drought-resistant, fruit trees, grains, and crops, and they were actually planting very productive farms in the United Arab Emirates, which is just desert, and growing more food than you can ever imagine with these drought-resistant crops. So I think there's creative solutions as well that we can look at in partnering with developing countries in different climates to produce food. There are a number of small organizations that are doing this, including a ministry organization called Echo Farms, which is in Florida, that will go into different parts of the world and teach the farmers how to grow large amounts of food in their region. So, and as Chandler mentioned, spices are relatively inexpensive in these lower income countries. They often sell them, outside of their country, and so it becomes more of a financial resource than just a physical resource. But I think you're right that that's a great opportunity to quickly improve the total antioxidant capacity of someone's diet as well. I'll just share one more example of a great project that may inspire you guys, you all on the call, to look at projects like this. But I worked with a friend of mine from Jamaica, and helped him reverse his blood pressure and type 2 diabetes. And he got so excited he shared it with his bishop in his church denomination in Jamaica. So they asked me to begin working with them. And so I suggested that we should take some of the land in front of the church and produce food, develop a farmer's market, and give the food to needy parishioners that will help their health. And at the same time, start an educational program out of the church. So they love the idea. And we've progressed now that we're starting to plant in next month. We're developing a kind of a plantation education component for the 40 churches in this denomination all across Jamaica. And so the place of worship becomes an incredible resource for education about regenerative agriculture, for opportunities to access food, for food security for those that are insecure, and for health education. And so I think by looking for unique opportunities like that, we can create more rapid change than simply going back through some of the same old channels. I think there are a lot of new opportunities.
Awesome. Okay, a couple more here. Where is the Rodale Conference October 2022?
The Rodale Conference in October will be on the Rodale Farm, which is in Berks County, Pennsylvania. And so you can just actually go to rodale.org and you can find information there about the conference. We'll also have that up in the next week or two on the Plantation Project website.
Perfect. Okay. And then last question here from Troy, kind of a big one. In attempting to collaborate and get different organizations talking to each other, for example, the FDA, the EPA, the USDA, how do you fight the uphill battle to have these organizations look beyond their individual interests and powerful lobbyists to implement positive change?
Yeah, that is the $1,000,000 question, Troy. That is the way that I've always approached these things is I find, I talk to people all the time. That's the power of conversation. I find motivated, inspired individuals. I begin working with them to start other conversations, to host events, in hopes that we'll start gathering up upstream more of these higher level individuals that are passionate and have greater influence. And that's what we've seen, with so many different organizations. That's how we started with the Plantation Project back in 2013. Just a single conversation that started and led into, organization that now reaches around the world. And so while I don't know or have an idea how to create that conversation of FDA, EPA, USDA in the same room, I know it needs to happen. And I know if we have enough conversations and begin inspiring individuals, we're going to work our way up that chain, and we will find some people that will usher us in to those rooms to start the conversation. And I always start these conversations from a proactive, hope-filled vision, rather than any conversation about the past and what's been done. I want to cast a future vision for people, rather than talking about all the harm and the challenges and the difficulties. So we're going to get there, Troy, and it's going to happen because of all of us working together. Somebody's going to find those people, and we'll get them all in the same room in the next 10 years. That's what I'm going to believe.
Yeah, and I truly do think making the connection for people of the potential for regenerative agriculture, for the farmers, for the land, and for human health and nutrition. I've been reading about regenerative agriculture for the last couple of years, and I keep seeing people are like, we've failed to really, take advantage of the opportunity to highlight how important this is for human health. So I think the more we can kind of spread this regenerative healthcare message, we'll get there. We
will. Yeah, because of people like you, Chandler, and your
Thank
father,
you so much, Scott,
and Patrick, and everybody in Utah. We will get there.
Well, thank you so much again, Scott, and thank you all for being here. This was fantastic. Like I said, we will send out this recording, post it on our website, and I hope everyone has a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Chandler. Have a great night.
Guys.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Patrick.
Scott.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.